On the day I was supposed to feel like a bride, I felt like a target, yes, but also like a survivor walking into the light. The vineyard glowed under the spring sun, rows of vines promising future sweetness, a stark contrast to the bitterness that had defined my past. The air was soft, carrying the scent of blossoms and the gentle murmur of arriving guests, our closest friends, Ethan's supportive colleagues, a few kind faces from my little corner of the world. This place, this day, was a creation of love, built piece by painstaking piece, just like the three-tiered wedding cake displayed proudly under a white tent near the reception area. That cake was more than just dessert. It was my masterpiece, a labor of love baked over 3 days, frosted with intricate patterns I designed myself. It represented my passion, my escape, the part of me my family never truly saw or valued. Ethan stood beside me, his hand warm and steady on my back. He looked handsome, his eyes reflecting the joy and peace I felt whenever I was with him. He was my anchor, the first person who had ever truly seen me, not just the quiet daughter, the overlooked sister. He saw the artist, the baker, the woman with dreams. With him, I felt safe, ready to finally step into my own story. My best friend Maya adjusted the delicate floral crown in my hair, her smile wide and genuine. "You look beautiful, Chloe," she whispered, her eyes welling up slightly. "You deserve this more than anyone." Her belief in me was a quiet strength I leaned on. The ceremony was perfect. Short, heartfelt vows under an arbor dripping with white roses. Looking into Ethan's eyes, the world outside seemed to melt away. I felt a profound sense of peace, a feeling I had chased my entire life. As we walked back down the aisle as husband and wife, hand in hand, the cheering of our friends was the only sound that mattered. We made it. We were here. For a moment, I allowed myself to believe the shadows of my past could not touch us. But peace, I had learned, was often fleeting when my family was involved. The reception music drifted through the air as guests mingled. Laughter, clinking glasses, the gentle clatter of silverware, it was everything I had dreamed of for my small, intimate celebration. Ethan and I were talking to his friend Lucas, a sharp-eyed architect with a kind smile, when I saw them. They stood at the edge of the reception space, a dark cloud against the spring brightness. My mother, Sarah, draped in pearls and an expression of thinly veiled disdain. My father, Thomas, beside her, his usual stern face set in disapproval. And between them, my sister Lily, wearing a dress that was far too dramatic for a guest, a smirk playing on her lips. They were uninvited, unannounced, and utterly brazen. My stomach dropped. The joy of the moment curdled into dread. From the moment Lily was born, 5 years after me, my life became a study in contrast. She was the sun, I was the shadow. Lily was bright, outgoing, conventionally talented, the kind of daughter Thomas and Sarah paraded around. Report cards with straight A's, lead roles in school plays, scholarships to prestigious universities. Every achievement was met with lavish praise, expensive gifts, and family celebrations that felt more like coronations. Our Lily, they would beam, as if I were an afterthought, a footnote in the family saga. And me? I was quiet. I liked to draw, to build things with my hands, to escape into the kitchen and bake. These were dismissed as nice hobbies or sweet little pastimes. I remember showing my mother a sketch for a unique jewelry piece I designed when I was a teenager. She barely glanced up from her magazine, murmuring, "That's cute, dear, but you need to focus on things that will get you somewhere, like Lily." My father, Thomas, a successful man in his own right, often just sighed and changed the subject if I tried to talk about my baking experiments. They invested heavily in Lily's future, tutors, summer programs abroad, helping her network into a prestigious law firm after graduation. For me, it was assumed I would figure things out on my own. And I did. I started selling my baked goods at local markets, built a small online following, and eventually saved enough to rent a tiny space, dreaming of opening my own bakery one day. It was hard, lonely work, but it was mine. I had grown used to the feeling of being invisible, of not measuring up. It was a quiet ache, a constant hum beneath the surface of my life. Then I met Ethan. He came into my life like a calm breeze. He did not demand attention, did not overshadow me. He just saw me. He would watch me work on a new cake design, genuinely fascinated. He tasted my creations with delight, telling me I had a gift. He listened when I talked about my dreams for the bakery, offering practical advice, drawing sketches for a potential layout. With Ethan, I was not just Isabella's quiet older sister, not just Thomas and Sarah's low-maintenance daughter. I was Chloe. I mattered. His love was the foundation I had always lacked. Our decision to get married felt like the culmination of finally building a life that was truly mine. Planning the wedding was a joy, choosing the vineyard for its natural beauty and relaxed feel, a place where we could celebrate our love intimately with the people who cared about us. It felt authentic, personal, everything my family seemed to dislike. We sent out our invitations in early spring. 2 weeks later, the call started. Not congratulations, but veiled questions about the date, the venue. So small, dear. Are you sure? Then came the bombshell. Lily announced her engagement to Jacob Sterling, the son of a prominent real estate developer. Suddenly, the country club Thomas and Sarah belonged to, the one they had always wanted Lily to marry in, was the only acceptable option. And, as fate would have it, the most desirable weekend they could secure for Lily's lavish affair clashed directly with our date. My mother, Sarah, called, her voice tight with what she clearly felt was reasonable demand. Chloe, darling, Lily and Jacob have decided on the country club. It's a marvelous opportunity, truly. The date is May 20th. My hand, which had been sketching a new cake design, froze. Mother, I said quietly, that is our wedding date. There was a sigh, loud and theatrical, down the phone line. Yes, well, obviously you will need to move yours. This is Lily's wedding. It will be a very important event. Key people attending. Your little garden party can easily be rescheduled, surely. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. My little garden party? The day I had poured so much hope and love into planning? No, I said, my voice gaining strength with each word. I am not changing my date. Invitations are out. Everything is booked. This day is important to us. Silence stretched between us, thick with my mother's disbelief. Thomas, and I think you are being incredibly selfish, she finally snapped, the pretense of sweetness gone. You would disrupt your sister's major life event just to prove a point? I am not disrupting anything, I countered, my voice shaking slightly. I booked this date first. You are asking me to sacrifice my day again for Lily. The call ended shortly after, not with a goodbye, but with my mother's indignant huff. The next few days were eerily silent. Then the whispers started reaching me. My parents were telling relatives that I was being unreasonable, that I was jealous of Lily, that I was intentionally trying to sabotage her happiness by refusing to reschedule. They were portraying me as the villain. The tension escalated quickly. Lily sent passive-aggressive texts, "Hope you enjoy your intimate gathering. Ours will be quite the affair." My father, Thomas, hinted darkly that my lack of family cooperation might affect future considerations, whatever that was supposed to mean. But Ethan was my rock. "They do not define you, Chloe," he said, holding my hand. "This is our wedding. Our life. Do not let them bully you out of it." Maya was equally supportive, fiercely loyal. "Stand your ground, Chloe," she insisted. "It's about time." Despite their support, a constant knot of anxiety tightened in my chest. Lily's resentment felt palpable, a physical weight in the air whenever I thought about her. About a week before the wedding, Maya called me, her voice hushed and worried. "Chloe, you are not going to believe what I overheard at the salon today." She told me about a conversation she'd accidentally caught between Lily and a friend. Lily was ranting about my wedding, calling it a spiteful little display. And then Maya's voice dropped. She said she was going to make sure my day was unforgettable too, by making sure yours was a disaster. She talked about finding a way to mess something up, specifically mentioning that ridiculous cake Chloe is so proud of. She said Mom and Dad get it and wouldn't stop her. My blood ran cold. They knew? They were okay with this? My cake. The one thing that felt truly mine, truly representative of my strength and passion. She wanted to attack that. A wave of fear washed over me. Should we cancel? Run away? Then a different feeling rose up, a slow, simmering rage that had been building for decades. No, not this time. I would not let them take this from me. I would not hide. Let her come, I told Ethan and Maya later that day, my voice firm despite the tremor in my hands. Let them all come. I will not be chased away from my own wedding. Ethan held me close. We face them together, he promised. On the wedding day, the calm I felt walking down the aisle was hard-earned. I focused on Ethan, on the love, on the future. The ceremony was a beautiful bubble of peace. But as we transitioned to the reception, the knowledge of my family's potential arrival and Lily's threat against my cake gnawed at me. We chatted with guests, the atmosphere light and happy. Lucas, Ethan's architect friend, was admiring the reception setup, chatting with Eleanor, the venue manager, a kind woman who had been incredibly helpful throughout the planning process. My eyes kept drifting to the cake. 3 tiers of vanilla bean and raspberry, covered in smooth buttercream and adorned with delicate sugar flowers I had crafted petal by petal. It looked perfect, solid, a testament to my skill and dedication. Eleanor had been impressed when I set it up yesterday, commenting on its stability and beauty. Then I saw them enter. Thomas, Sarah, and Lily, walking with an air of entitlement that always made my skin crawl. The joyful buzz in the tent faltered, replaced by murmurs and stares. Sarah was adjusting her pearls, a tight smile on her face. Thomas had his arms crossed, looking utterly bored. Lily, in her attention-grabbing dress, scanned the crowd with a look of smug superiority. They walked straight towards us. Lily reached us first, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Lovely setup, Chloe," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "So charmingly simple." Ethan stepped closer to me instinctively, a protective presence. I squeezed his arm gently. "It is everything we wanted, Lily," I replied, keeping my voice steady. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper meant only for me. "You should have rescheduled, Chloe. You think you have one? You ruined everything for me. Now I ruin your little moment." Before I could even process her words, she moved swiftly towards the cake, a small, dark object concealed in her hand. It happened in a flash. She paused by the cake table, feigning admiration. Then with a quick, almost imperceptible movement, she did something near the base of the lowest tier. It looked like a tiny puncture or the application of something sticky. She pulled her hand back, a flicker of malicious triumph in her eyes, then turned back to us, smiling innocently. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a thin crack appeared in the buttercream near where she had touched it. It snaked upwards. The lowest tier began to visibly sag, slowly at first, then more rapidly. A collective gasp went through the crowd. As Ethan and I instinctively reached for the cake knife, the lower half buckled completely. The upper tiers tilted precariously, sliding off with a sickening crash, frosting and cake scattering across the table and the ground. My masterpiece. Ruined. My heart shattered along with the cake. The humiliation was immediate, searing hot on my face. Tears welled in my eyes. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat, my gaze fixed on the beautiful mess of crumbs and frosting. Ethan's arm was instantly around me, holding me steady. His face was a mask of pure fury. "She did this," he roared, his voice cutting through the shocked silence. "She sabotaged the cake." Lily just stood there, a faint, satisfied smile on her face. Thomas and Sarah remained stoic, Sarah muttering, "Honestly, Chloe, such a fuss over a cake." But others were already reacting. Lucas, Ethan's architect friend, was pointing. I saw her do something to the base just now. She used something." Eleanor, the venue manager, rushed over, her face pale. "That cake was perfectly stable when we checked it 15 minutes ago. I saw her standing right here. She was fiddling with it." Ethan wasted no time. "Call 911, he shouted to the crowd. "We need the police." This was intentional. Maya was already on her phone, dialing frantically. Lily's smugness wavered slightly as the reality of the situation sunk in. "It was an accident," she protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Thomas and Sarah started herding her away, trying to disappear into the crowd. Within minutes, the distant wail of sirens grew closer. 2 police cruisers and an ambulance pulled into the vineyard driveway. Officers emerged, quickly assessing the scene. The ruined cake, Chloe's tear-streaked face, the distraught wedding party, the accusing fingers pointed at Lily and her parents. Officer Miller, a tall, no-nonsense woman, approached Lily. "Ma'am, we need you to step aside. This is ridiculous." Lily protested. "It was an accident. My sister is just being dramatic." But Officer Miller was not interested in excuses. She had already spoken briefly with Lucas and Eleanor. "We have multiple witnesses stating they saw you intentionally tamper with the wedding cake, ma'am. This is destruction of property, potentially criminal mischief. You are under arrest." As the handcuffs clicked into place, Lily let out a shriek, turning her furious gaze on me. "You did this. You always ruin everything." I stood there, supported by Ethan, watching her. My face was wet with tears, but a new feeling was rising, a quiet strength born from years of being pushed. "No, Lily," I said softly, my voice clear despite the pain. "You did this to yourself." Officer Miller then turned to Thomas and Sarah, who were trying to fade into the background. "Mr. and Mrs. Parent's last name, assuming a generic last name for narrative purposes, we need you to come with us as well. Witnesses report you encouraged this behavior and attempted to obstruct our investigation. There are potential charges of conspiracy and aiding and abetting." Thomas and Sarah looked stunned, their masks of indifference finally cracking. They protested loudly, but the officers were firm. They were led away in handcuffs, following Lily. The sight of them, the Golden family, being escorted off my wedding venue in disgrace, was surreal. The last thing I saw before Ethan gently turned me away from the scene was the look of shock and discomfort on Jacob Sterling's face among the guests. He had clearly been oblivious to his fiancée and future in-law's true nature. The immediate aftermath was a blur of police statements, sympathetic guests, and the quiet, comforting presence of Ethan and Maya. The ruined cake lay on the table, a painful symbol of the day's events. Eleanor, the venue manager, assured us they had preserved the cake and would cooperate fully with the investigation, confirming she saw Lily's deliberate action. Lucas recounted exactly what he saw to the police, his architect's eye noting how Lily seemed to target a specific load-bearing point. Later that night, back in our hotel room, the emotional weight crashed down on me. I cried, not just for the ruined cake or the disrupted day, but for the decades of neglect, the casual cruelty, the constant feeling of being less than. "They really did that," I whispered to Ethan, my voice thick with pain. On our wedding day, Ethan held me tight, his own anger a palpable force. "They did," he said, his voice low and fierce. "But they will not get away with it. I promise you, Chloe." And for the first time, I knew he could make that promise real. The next morning, Ethan was already on the phone with our lawyer, Mr. Fields, a sharp attorney known for his meticulous approach. Ethan explained everything: the history of favoritism, the conflict over the wedding, the overheard plot, the public sabotage, the witnesses, the family's behavior. Mr. Fields was immediately on board. "This is a clear case of intentional property damage and potentially civil charges for emotional distress," he stated. "Given the context, the planning, and your parents' alleged involvement, the conspiracy charges against them are also very real. We will pursue this aggressively." Over the next few weeks, Mr. Fields built our case. He gathered statements from Lucas and Eleanor, whose eyewitness accounts were crucial. He secured photos and videos guests had taken of the ruined cake and the family's reaction. He obtained the police report. Maya provided her testimony about overhearing Lily's plan and the mention of parental complicity. We even arranged for a forensic analysis of the cake remnants, which might show if a foreign substance was used to destabilize it. Thomas and Sarah hired their own lawyers, who immediately went on the offensive, trying to paint Chloe as unstable, the wedding as insignificant, and the cake incident as a clumsy accident blown out of proportion. Lily maintained her denial, claiming she was just looking at the cake when it unexpectedly fell. But the evidence was strong, and the family's defense weak and transparent. The trial date was set. Walking into the courtroom felt like walking onto a stage, but this time, I was not a background character. I was the protagonist. I wore a simple, elegant dress, my head held high. Ethan was right beside me, his hand on my back as we walked to our seats. Thomas, Sarah, and Lily sat on the other side with their lawyers, looking tense and defensive. I was one of the first to testify. I spoke about my childhood, the constant comparisons, the feeling of being invisible, the pain of never being enough. I described planning my wedding, my refusal to be moved, the threats, the fear, the warning about the cake. And then I recounted the moment at the reception, the arrival, Lily's cruel words, the swift, deliberate action, the horrifying collapse of my cake, my humiliation and heartbreak. I spoke clearly, honestly, allowing myself to feel the emotions but channeling them into strength. Ethan testified next, his voice firm with righteous anger as he described seeing the attack, witnessing my devastation, and the family's callous reaction. He spoke about the love we shared and how they had tried to taint the most important day of our lives. Lucas, the architect, provided powerful testimony. He explained, with technical precision, how he observed Lily make a specific, targeted movement near the cake space that would structurally compromise it, confirming it could not have been accidental. Eleanor, the venue manager, corroborated his account and confirmed the cake's perfect condition before Lily approached it, refuting the defense's claim of a flimsy cake. Maya testified about overhearing Lily's plan and the explicit mention of the cake and parental awareness. Mr. Fields masterfully presented the evidence, weaving together the witness accounts, photos, and the history of family dynamics to paint a clear picture of premeditated malice and parental complicity. He even presented evidence of Thomas and Sarah's attempts to pressure witnesses after the event. When Lily testified, she was arrogant and dismissive, sticking to her story of an accident. She stumbled under cross-examination, her lies becoming obvious. Thomas and Sarah were equally unconvincing, trying to portray themselves as loving parents caught in the middle of a sibling dispute, denying any knowledge of Lily's intent or any attempt to obstruct justice. But their past actions and words, testified to by me and Maya, contradicted their claims. The judge listened intently, his expression serious. After closing arguments, he took a short recess. The tension in the courtroom was suffocating. When he returned and began to read the verdict, my heart pounded in my chest. On the charge of intentional property damage, guilty. On the charge of emotional distress, guilty. On the charge of conspiracy and aiding and abetting for the parents, guilty. A wave of shock rippled through the family's side of the courtroom. Lily gasped. Thomas and Sarah looked stunned. The judge then delivered the sentences. Lily received a sentence of 3 years in state prison, along with significant fines and court-ordered damages to compensate us for the cost of the cake, therapy, and emotional suffering. Thomas and Sarah each received substantial fines and were ordered to pay a larger portion of the emotional damages. And acknowledging the history of toxic behavior and potential for further harassment, the judge issued a permanent restraining order, prohibiting all 3 of them from contacting me or Ethan in any way. As the sentences were read, Lily erupted. "You did this," she shrieked at me, tears of rage streaming down her face as the bailiffs moved to take her into custody. "You are ruining my life. You always wanted to be special." I met her gaze calmly, my own tears gone, replaced by a profound sense of peace. "No, Lily," I said, my voice steady and quiet, audible in the stunned silence. "I just stopped letting you ruin mine." As the bailiffs led her away, screaming, I saw Jacob Sterling get up from the gallery and quietly walk out, not even looking at Lily or her parents. The Golden family's carefully constructed world had publicly crumbled. Thomas and Sarah sat slumped in their seats, looking bewildered as officers prepared to escort them. Leaving the courtroom with Ethan, the sunlight felt brighter, the air lighter. A weight I had carried my entire life had finally been lifted. It was not about revenge in a hateful sense, but about justice, boundaries, and finally reclaiming my right to exist happily, free from their control. The story of the wedding cake attack made local news, focusing on the unusual nature of the sabotage and the family dynamics. Public sympathy was overwhelmingly on our side. Messages of support poured in from friends, acquaintances, and even strangers. Ethan and I finally had our delayed honeymoon. We went somewhere quiet, just us. One evening, sitting together, Ethan presented me with a small, perfect 2-tiered cake he had commissioned from a local baker, simple, elegant, flawless. We cut it together, symbolically reclaiming our moment, not with anger, but with love and resilience. Returning home, I knew it was time to finally fully embrace my passion. The story, the publicity, and the final closure from the trial gave me the push I needed. I used some of the court-ordered damages to help fund the opening of my bakery. I called it Sweet Rise Bakery, a nod to the sweetness I found after hardship and my own rise from the shadows. I framed the news article about the trial and hung it discreetly in the back office, a quiet reminder of how far I had come. Customers came, drawn by the story perhaps, but they stayed because of the quality of my baking, the passion in every cake and pastry. My work started getting noticed in local food blogs and magazines. I was finally seen, truly seen, for my talent and my strength. Years later, the restraining order meant I had no contact with Thomas, Sarah, or Lily. I heard through distant relatives that Lily struggled in prison and that Thomas and Sarah faced social consequences for their actions. Jacob Sterling had indeed ended his engagement to Lily, unable to reconcile her cruelty and her parents' complicity with the image he had of her. My life with Ethan is full of love, peace, and the sweet scent of baking. The scar of the past remains, a reminder of where I came from, but it does not define me. It is simply part of the story that led me here. I stood up for myself, fought for my happiness, and built a life more beautiful and sweet than anything my family could ever have imagined or tried to destroy. And that, truly, was the sweetest revenge.